So it's probably a good idea to talk about this, mainly just because there's so many people that are just uneducated about the whole situation. And also, I just kind of want to add my insights on the whole thing. But before I get into any of this, I just want to list a few trigger warnings here. This is a video with some pretty sensitive topics, so if you're not really comfortable with that, then, you can just click off. It all started back in January of 2022 when Mason Greenwood's girlfriend Harriet Robson accused Mason of assaulting her. The way she did was by posting multiple images on her Instagram story. I won't be able to show them though, mainly because YouTube definitely will not allow that. She then followed that up with a voice note of what sounded like Mason allegedly trying to her. This voice note is extremely hard to listen to because throughout it, Mason is trying to manipulate Harriet while she's screaming for him to get off in fear. Hours after all this came out and made the rounds, Mason Greenwood was then arrested on suspicions of rape and assault. Manchester United then suspended him soon after. Now, we didn't hear much about his case until October 2022, when Greenwood was arrested for allegedly breaching bail conditions by contacting his accuser. Ironically enough, that same day he was charged with attempted rape for an alleged incident on October 2021, assault for another alleged incident in December 2021, and was also charged for engaging in controlling behavior from November 2018 to October 2021. As a consequence, he was put in custody, but then was granted bail a month later. Again, we didn't really hear too much until the very next year when some pretty big news came out. On February 2nd, 2023, the Crown Prosecution Service dropped all charges against Greenwood, citing the withdrawal of key witnesses. Immediately, this generated the conversation of Mason Greenwood's return, and questions were asked about how United would deal with the situation. As the months passed by, media starts pointing out Mason Greenwood in public alongside Harriet Robson, who is now apparently pregnant. Those pregnancy rumors were confirmed when in mid-July, the two came back from a long social media absence to announce the birth of their child. Now fast forward to the present, since the charges were dropped 6 months ago, there still hasn't been any decision made by the club regarding Greenwood. But we'll get back to that in a second. First, I want to break all this down because there's a lot. First, let's go back to February of this year when the charges were dropped because of the withdrawal of key witnesses. This is a very common misunderstanding when it comes to anything regarding, crime or justice or anything like this. I really need people to understand though that this doesn't mean he's innocent, nor does it mean his partner lied. In fact, if a victim or witness admits to lying, they can be arrested or prosecuted. Oftentimes though, when witnesses withdraw, it can be for many reasons. They've forgiven the defendant, reconciled with them, or they could feel intimidated, anxious, or even fear retaliation. And that goes to my next question: why is Harriet back with Mason Greenwood? People will say it was because Harriet forgave Mason and just leave it there. Well, and then demand Mason's return. But oftentimes they kind of forget this key detail. It is very common for a victim of abuse to either stay or return to their abuser. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, survivors of abuse return to their partners an average of 7 times before they leave for good. And I know that number might sound pretty unbelievable because why would a victim return to a place of harm? Why don't they just walk out the door? The problem is, it's very difficult to understand an abuse victim situation, especially if you're on the outside looking in. Abusers will often use tactics to maintain control of a relationship. Fear and intimidation are very common. For example, the partner is afraid of the consequences if they decide to leave the relationship, either out of fear of their partner's actions or concern over their ability to be independent. Shame is another tactic where the abuser will try to gaslight the victim into thinking they did something wrong and deserve the abuse. Another common act of control is making the victim think that no one else finds any value in them, their friends, family, no one. Or, in what I think could be the case here, is twisted love. Even after being abused, victims will often still feel strong, intimate feelings for their partner. They might have children together, want to save the relationship, or hope that the abuser returns to the person that they had originally met. Because abusive relationships develop over time. The signs aren't exactly just right then and there. An example of this outside of the Greenwood situation would be the recent Steven Crowder incident. Jay Aubrey is one of my favorite video essay channels. He made a great video on this, so definitely check it out. It'll be in the annotations here. Basically what happened though was that footage from a security camera was leaked to social media showing Steven verbally abusing his wife Hillary in their backyard. Following the leaks, Hillary's family said in a statement that Hillary had been hiding Steven's abusive behavior for years in hopes she could save the marriage. So that all said, Harriet forgiving Mason is not the end-all be-all, because with the voice note and the photos that have come out, it is just simply not that straightforward. No person in the right headspace goes through all of that and then forgives their partner. Before we go over how Manchester United have dealt with this whole situation, I want to quickly address a portion of the internet that is just absolutely brain dead and mentally deranged. Some of the reactions of the most recent news, and even really before then, include Free Mason, bring back Greenwood. Whether these are kids, teens, men who have never talked to a female in their lives, or there have even been the case of pick-me girls, for whatever reason, I can't stress enough how much I need to say this. Because it's so ironic to me that it's like the entirety of that portion of the internet just kind of exposed themselves throughout this entire thing. Usually when accusations are first reported, there's a good amount of people that just immediately say innocent till proven guilty. Which isn't a bad statement, it's just kind of weird that they do it immediately after hearing news about someone being accused almost like it's a defensive instinct. In this case though, where there's actual physical evidence, this crowd has straight up been saying, whatever happened to second chances? Let me repeat that for you, okay? Let's give Mason a second chance. So what you're telling me is that you acknowledge that Mason did all these abhorrent things, and you are still behind him. Okay. I mean, you said it, not me. A lot of people defending Greenwood have also been saying, oh, he made a mistake. Domestic violence is not a mistake. Far from it. We went over this earlier. An abusive relationship revolves around maintaining control. By definition, that's not a mistake. That's an intention. And speaking of second chances, yeah, I think there is such thing as a second chance, but not in the way these people are looking at it. No, he shouldn't be returning to United. He should be in jail for years, in abuser counseling, that way this never happens again, and then he can build up his career again. And that'll take years, but hate to break it to you, your cruelty towards others that trusted you has deep consequences, and you need to be held accountable for them. Another thing about social media is that it very much connects back to that feeling of being trapped in an abusive relationship. If you've even touched the cesspool that is the Mason Greenwood tag on the trending page, it's filled with misogynistic fanboys. And recently on Twitter, an account called Female Fans Against Greenwood's Return has been very vocal. They released a statement that went pretty viral and immediately were met with vile messages from those same fanboys. So I could only imagine the suffocating feeling of not only feeling trapped by your partner, but also as fans who would absolutely tear you to shreds in comment sections and messages if you were even slightly against your abuser. And trust me, there's definitely a few deranged people that will go as far as to try and harm you in person just to make sure you're silenced. Now with that out of the way, we can finally talk about how the club has dealt with this. And United has dealt with this horrifically. They've been taking what shouldn't be a very complex issue and complicating it to no end. What the club has basically been doing is seeing what Mason Greenwood can bring to the future of this club. Because before all of this, Mason Greenwood was a top prospect in the country, and there's also been reports that Erik ten Hag was open to having him return to the squad, which by the way, Erik ten Hag if that's the case. So in summary, United has approached this in an extremely inhumane way. I mean, it's pretty safe to say that according to Manchester United, money and performance outweighs a sexual assault victim. Because we all know, had Mason Greenwood been just like a mediocre player, no status really, Manchester United wouldn't have hesitated to kick him out. But that was just the beginning of how United's dealt with it so far. Because recently the club decided to consult the women's team about letting Greenwood play for the club again. You know, a group that literally has nothing to do with this situation, didn't need anything to do with this situation. Oh, and by the way, 3 of their players are currently in the World Cup right now. Oh, and now thanks to Manchester United, they're probably being harassed in their own messages. But then today, as of this recording, The Athletic came out with a report saying that Manchester United's chief executive Richard Arnold told the club's executive leadership in the first week of August that United were planning to bring back Mason Greenwood. Soon after this article was released, United, having been exposed for the small club they are, released their own statement for damage control. The statement didn't really say much, it practically just confirmed that yes, Mason Greenwood will be returning to United with a bunch of mental gymnastics. I mean, they didn't actually say it, but you know he's coming back. But there are 2 things I want to pay a little more attention to in this statement. Firstly, we have partial evidence in the public domain. Partial evidence. Partial. Really? And that just goes back to my point. United never actually cared about the victim because what a god-awful way to just disregard that evidence. The other thing I want to spotlight is this particular paragraph. The statement says, quote, "We also have responsibilities to Mason as an employee, as a young person who has been with the club since the age of 7, and as a new father with a partner." So basically what you've just read is United sweeping Mason's crimes under the rug and shifting the narrative. I can't really say I'm shocked. I also want to go back to the women's team for a second, because if the Athletics article is accurate, it was said that the chief executive told the executive leadership in the first week of August that Mason would be returning. The whole consulting the women's team thing was 5 days ago. So basically, the higher-ups at Manchester United just used the women's team as a sacrifice. Am I surprised though? No. Honestly, the moment I saw the charges be dropped, I knew this day was coming. Because if you follow the NFL like I do, you'll know this is nothing new. But this sets such a horrible example for the entire world going forward. Already, men aren't held accountable for their actions, and this will only encourage them more. And there's so many impressionable kids and teens that follow this sport that are already going down the wrong pipelines, and this just throws them even deeper. And despite all the concerns and criticisms, it's been shown throughout these last 6 months that United does not care about a single person, a single fan. They only care about their profits. I talked about this a year ago. A club of that stature only sees us as numbers. They will give you this perception that we are a family. We appreciate our fans. No, they fucking don't. And it's just so ironic seeing clubs promoting women's football and encouraging more women to watch the sports, and then like this happens. It's just so sad seeing something like that be looked at in terms of profits going up or profits going down. I mean, again, the evidence was there, and there was no punishment. I couldn't even imagine how powerless that makes a woman feel. I don't really know what else to say. Mason Greenwood will definitely be back in a Manchester United shirt very soon. So hopefully Christian Romero can do something about that.